Good evening, everyone. I call the Thursday, March 23rd, 2023 Peninsula School District Board of Directors meeting to order. I would like to also officially welcome you to the first day of second winter. I hope you enjoyed spring yesterday, and hopefully it'll come back around again in a little bit. If you would please all stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. We are going to roll right along and move into the approval of the agenda for this evening. Is there any discussion prior to the vote? Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Okay, it has been moved by Jennifer and seconded by David to approve the agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
The motion is carried. The agenda is approved. Moving on to the consent agenda, is there any discussion prior to the vote?
Yes, I do have a question about the two of the travel requests that are on.
Yours too.
I wanted to have a discussion about two of the travel requests that are on here for the high school football teams to travel to camps this summer. They just were, I think due to the nature of the form, they were filled out differently, and it appeared that the cost to the district was significantly different when in fact it's the same. And I was wondering if we could have, I just believe it's due to the way that the cost gets accounted for. And I was wondering if we could have that clarified. However, I'm seeing now that there's been an amendment to the actual form, and so now I'm only seeing the one high school's form on here.
Oh, okay.
But the point, I'm wondering if we could, I mean, I think we all know, but I think it's very confusing when there's a cost to sometimes it'll appear that the cost to the district is very large in one area and it's very small to another, and these trips are so similar, but just for different high schools. I thought it would be good for the sake of anyone who's digging into this to look at and have it explained why.
Yeah, absolutely. And so
why the form is the way it is.
It's a form, which is a standard form. It looks like it's been filled out differently. Ashley, do you mind stepping up and just kind of explaining the process?
So we are actually working on creating a standardized written process on how to complete the form. So it will be completed the same, regardless of whether or not it comes from PHS, Gig Harbor High School, or Henderson Bay. Ultimately, the biggest piece that tends to confuse individuals when they're completing it is that ultimately there is a cost. It's just in these type of situations, the parents and the boosters tend to pay that cost. And so it's not actually dollars coming from the district general fund or ASB fund that's actually covering it.
Perfect, thank you. Because it is confusing when sometimes it says cost to district, but then below that it says to be paid by parents or,
Sure,
donations.
yeah. And it's a significant cost of
Exactly.
$60,000.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Thank you for clarifying that.
I appreciate that. Okay, any other discussion on the consent agenda prior to the vote? Okay, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It has been moved by Lori and seconded by Chuck to approve the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The motion is carried. Consent agenda is approved. We're going to roll on to item 5, the student school board representative. So we have Henderson Bay and Peninsula here tonight. Our Gig Harbor reps were unable to make it, but we do have a report that one of our Peninsula reps is going to read for Gig Harbor. So I will let you decide who's going to kick it off.
I guess I'll kick it off. I'm reading for PHS tonight. I feel like it's been a while since we've been here. I don't know. But yeah, I've missed you guys. I don't know. It's fun going to these. It's like a routine now in my life. Yeah. Well, we got a couple of things going on the Peninsula. Well, I'll start with sports. Spring sports are just starting, so there's not like a lot going on, but all of them are doing really well so far, just with the first couple games and stuff. In track, had a huge turnout, which is really good, so that's really cool. At the end of February 28th and March 1st, we had Breaking Down the Walls. That was a really cool event. I went on to the February 28th one. Stu Cave was leading it, and it went really good. There was a lot of people there. It was a lot of fun, and it was just really cool to get to know everybody. Spring fling. That went really well as well. There's a big turnout. A lot of people there. Ran really smooth, and as Avery told me, she tore up the dance floor. And recently in our homerooms for Women's History Month, we've been recognizing a few important women in our history, just to celebrate women. Rosa Parks. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that doesn't work anymore. Vaughn. So from our feeder schools, Vaughn it was doing a reading roundup. And what was really cool is we had a couple PHS students and some parents that went in to read there. I think there's 4 PHS students, and Avery was one of them. Good job, Avery. They went down there.
No, I did read about a cat though. Not Fluffy.
Some sort of cat. I don't know. Yeah, so they had that reading roundup, and that went really well. And they are scheduling a STEM night in June. For KPMS, they had work done on their track and long jump, which is good. Just in time for signups for track, so they're happy about that. 2 rooms are close to completion, and the kitchen is also near completion for their construction. The TSA club is leaving on March 22nd for a TSA state conference. This is the first year that KPMS has sent students to state, and they'll have 7 students plus their 2 advisors in attendance. Avery, you want to speak to that? Those are your feeder schools.
I don't know. I just put down what they tell me.
Perfect. Thank you. And then our PBIS Trimester Awards Assembly is on April 4th, and parents will be invited. Students who have excelled on their traits of respectable, responsible, and safe second trimester will be acknowledged at this event. Yeah, pretty cool. That's all we got going. Yeah.
Go Hawks, but yeah. Okay, I'm Avery. I'm from Peninsula, but I'll be reading for Gig Harbor. So this month at Gig Harbor, leadership completed a food drive earlier this month to support food backpacks for kids. Their Chinese program hosted its first China Night Festival since 2020 in February. Students wrote and performed skits all in Chinese and also performed traditional music, dances, and songs, and prepared a variety of traditional foods to share with the audience. STEAM Club traveled to Voyager Elementary School to help out with an event called STEAM Rocks. It was a great opportunity to connect with younger students and share some knowledge. They will be competing at the WTSA State Conference this week. And then spring sports are underway. Tides are busy competing in softball, baseball, golf, track, boys soccer, girls lacrosse, girls tennis, girls water polo. Boys swim and dive took 5th place at state, and their cheer team took 1st place at state. Today, they sent out their dance team H2WO off to state. NJROTC is visiting middle schools this week and has their formal dining out next month. They did a spring clothing drive this week. They're asking that Gig Harbor High School students and families donate gently used clothing. Collection bins are located outside of the leadership class. The grade that donates the most clothing will get to pie a staff member of their choice at the spring assembly. All clothing will be donated to the Tacoma Rescue Mission. And their yearbook is wrapping up this week. And then some upcoming events. They have the spring musical Mamma Mia, which will be April 28th through 29th and May 5th through 6th. The boosters auction is June 2nd at 5 p.m. at Canterwood. The prom for their seniors is June 10th, and graduation is June 17th at 3 p.m. in the Tacoma Dome.
Hello, I'm from Henderson Bay. So, we enacted a pancake breakfast recently, which raised more than $2,000 for the Interact Club kids who are going to Guatemala to help out there. Our school is doing a mental health first aid class/seminar for our school so that people can help those in need. our leadership class is doing a courtyard cleanup to help make our courtyard look a little better and like add some stuff to it, like fairy lights or Edison lights and stuff like that. And they're also going to put a garden there as well. We got a new para educator there, so they will help us out. One of our leadership kids helped set up our schools to have merchandise, so we now have stuff like sweatpants and t-shirts. And then we have the burnt waffle incident, which is, and I kid you not, we got a fire, well, the fire alarm went off, so we all went out. We thought it was a fire drill or something. No, the teacher put a waffle in the toaster, and it got so burnt that it caught fire. I kid you not, we have pictures too. They're pretty burnt. But either way, that's it. That's all we have.
I'm gonna take a little license here and kind of tag on to the Gig Harbor report, if I could, just for a minute, if you'll indulge me. I'd like to call Michelle Suter up if you have an announcement to make on behalf of Gig Harbor.
Thank you. Can I ask Mary Kate Grant to come up?
Absolutely, yes.
So thank you. I appreciate you having us here tonight. The last time I stood before you, I had the opportunity to thank you for, to Superintendent Barr and the Board of Directors for allowing James Cantonwine to serve as our assistant principal this year. And again, we were so grateful for that. We are so pleased and to have found our next assistant principal at Gig Harbor High School. Our interview team, we had over 20 people apply for the position. It was a long process. It was quite the pool of candidates, and we winnowed that down. And we are so pleased to announce that we have selected Ashley Stolhand as the next assistant principal at Gig Harbor High School. Feel free to ask her all the questions.
I'll answer all of them, yeah. Thank you both. It's been a fun process. I've been in this district since August of 2020, and it has been amazing to me to come in the middle of the pandemic and just see the excellence and the drive of the staff throughout the district. So I'm really excited for the future and the adventure ahead. Roll Tide, game on. Let's go.
Welcome, Ashley. Thank you very much. I think that was an excellent choice. We're really, really excited to have you on board in this capacity. I know you'll do great things, and students will be excited to hear that. Okay, we are going to roll on to comments from the community. Speakers will be given up to 3 minutes. We will be displaying a countdown timer so that speakers will be aware of their time. Board Policy 1430 states in part that the president may exercise discretion to interrupt or terminate an individual's statement when it is too lengthy, personally directed, abusive, obscene, or irrelevant. I'll call the first speaker's name and the next up speaker. Speakers, please state your first and last name for the record. First up, we have Jeremy Clark. And then after that, we'll have Sarah Garriott.
My name is Jeremy Clark. I have two kids in the district. I'm here to talk about a HIB investigation that my child's been going through. I was here 2 weeks ago, asked you a question. You did not get back to me until after you had made a ruling on denying that appeal, and you didn't directly address the question regarding whether a hearing was required or not, instead stating only that the board concurs with the district that the review of materials satisfies the language of the policy. Your ruling of denial is invalid and void as it is based on a false pretense that a hearing was not required as part of the appeal process. Your policy specifically states an appeal before the board or disciplinary appeals council must be heard on or before the 10th school day following the filing of the written notice of appeal to the board. The board will review the record and render a written decision on the merits of the appeal on or before the 5th school day following the termination of the hearing. And shall provide a copy to all parties involved. The board's decision will be the final district decision. As any person with basic comprehension and competency can see that a hearing is clearly outlined in the procedures as being required as part of the appeal process. As the board did not conduct the required hearing prior to issuing a ruling, nor did it conduct a required hearing within 10 school days, it is in violation of its own policy. As such, you have denied due process to a student in this district. Due process. Specifically my child. I believe this now constitutes a civil liberties violation on the part of the district and the school board. Clearly, you have not been acting in good faith in this matter, and your actions are seen as retaliatory in nature in an effort to suppress further information from coming out regarding this matter now that we have finally received the evidence. We did not receive evidence until after the first appeal. That is how transparent this district is in these matters. As such, I have 2 questions for this school board. The HIB policy has been around since 2011. How many hearings has the school board had on HIB-related matters? Second, as you've obviously fully reviewed the HIB investigation regarding my child prior to rendering your denial, what were the exact statements reported on the basis of this HIB investigation? This would have been what I reported to the Dean of Students and the Principal of Swiftwater for the incidents on 1/6 and 1/10 of this year. I ask as these were not included in the evidence I was provided from the district, and the district has refused to answer that question to me. I expect both these in writing. Thank you.
After Sarah Garriott, we'll have Mark Nance.
Good evening, members of the board. I just wanted to, I don't know if I'm going to take up even my whole 3 minutes tonight. I just wanted to let you know today that there was a hearing, bring to your awareness more than anything, there was a hearing, a congressional hearing today that you might want to listen to. It was regarding the memorandum that our Attorney General Merrick Garland sent out regarding school board members and parents, and it was quite the hearing today. In summary, I'm just going to read a couple things from a report that came out from the congressional hearing prior to the hearing today. And it said, in response to the committee's subpoena, the FBI acknowledged for the first time that it opened 25 guardian assessments of school board threats, and that 6 of these investigations were run by the FBI's Counterterrorism Division. These admissions supplement whistleblower disclosures about the FBI's actions, including disclosures the FBI investigated a mom because she belonged to a, quote, right-wing moms group, end quote, and, quote, is a gun owner, end quote, and a dad because, quote, he rails against the government, end quote. According to the FBI, none of the school board-related investigations have resulted in federal arrests or charges. I think that's really important to note, highlighting the political motives behind the Attorney General's actions. The administration's goal seems to have been silencing the critics of its radical education policies and neutralizing an issue that was threatening Democratic Party prospects in the close gubernatorial race in Virginia. The reason this is important, I think, is because although the NSBA has recalled and sent an apology letter for their directive, Merrick Garland has yet to rescind his memorandum. So this threat is still open. The FBI is still have their snitch line. All of these things are still open until he rescinds that. So I would encourage our district to go ahead and let their opinion be known that this needs to be rescinded, that parents should have the right to speak freely at their school board meetings and under no threat of any kind of federal interference with the FBI or anyone else, that our First Amendment rights should be protected. And so he, in conclusion here, I think maybe I will take my whole 3 minutes. There is another conclusion here. He says, the committee's subpoenas have returned new information that demonstrates how the Biden administration misused its federal law enforcement and counterterrorism resources on school board-related threats. The document shed new light on the administration's coordination with education special interests to generate the predicate for Justice Department's actions. The subpoenaed documents show there was no legitimate nationwide basis for the Attorney General's directive to insert federal law enforcement enforcement into local school board matters. In fact, almost universally, local law enforcement rejected the directive and expressed strong preference that local authorities handle local matters. It is all of the testimonies that were given today were stunning. I hope that you'll take the time to listen to it. There has been an increased threat against our First Amendment here in this state with 1333 that thankfully just died on the House floor, that they were also attempting to silence speech. And now with this happening and it's still open, we really need to act. Thank you very much.
And after Mark, we'll have Michael Perot.
Thank you very much, honorary school board members. I appreciate your time tonight. First of all, I want to start out by thanking you for the WASDA vote that you took last year supporting parents and family rights. That's a great vote, and I know we all appreciate it. I also know that there's at least one parent tonight that doesn't feel like you're living up to that vote. I believe that parental involvement is one of the highest indicators of student success, and there's research out there to show that. So I was looking through your strategic plan, and I was glad to see goal number 5, and it was around community engagement, and parental rights is like one of the first things that's listed there. So kudos to you for doing that. What I didn't see is on the district dashboard or any place else where you're measuring that. There's at least one measure tonight that would say you're not meeting your strategy. So how do you measure parental rights? You can look at parental engagement and involvement, and I think that's related, but it's not the same. Parental engagement is not the same as parental rights. We have one parent tonight that feels like his parental rights have been violated. So that's different than parental engagement. I don't know how you measure parental rights, but what I would encourage you to do is to think of an outcome-based metric, not an activity-based metric. An activity-based metric would be like, 500 parents contributed time this quarter to their schools, right? That's activity-based. We want outcomes. We want parents to know that you have their backs around their rights in raising their children. So I would encourage you to do that. I believe, as I was telling Chuck West tonight, I believe that Peninsula School District is the best district in Pierce County. The best. But we want to keep it that way. So I would encourage you to develop metrics that reflect that and actions that follow. Let's not report the news. Let's make the news. Thank you.
I'm looking at the speakers here, and after Michael, I have Kelly Jo, but I'm going to let you guys decide. This is a husband-wife team. Who goes first?
I don't know the order got out. Marta.
Okay. Marta, if you would like to go first. Okay. All right. Marta, can you tell us your last name, please?
Yes, it's Drevnock.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Today is a really great day. It is, we just had spring conferences for my little guys. I have 2 boys in the district. They're one at Swiftwater and one at Pioneer. My older son, Henry, we've never had such a great conference ever, so we're really excited. But it really makes me think back to a year ago. Maybe just under a year ago, we learned that Henry has dyslexia. And it's something that we didn't know. He had all these other things going on, but really buried under there was something that he was struggling with, which is a significant learning disability. We didn't know what to do. We had no idea this was coming. And reached out to our school and didn't get much in the way of help. Fast forward to the last few months when I've been meeting with lots of parents in the community that have struggled with the same thing. A lot of their kids are older and they've been through this district for many years, and it's really disheartening to see that they haven't felt supported over this journey through PSD. I feel really good about where my son's at, but we have so much more to go. He's only in 4th grade. So tonight we are presenting some recommendations that we have put together as a group over many months. We really feel like there is more that should be done here in Peninsula School District to be a leader. We look at other districts nearby, other districts in the state that have specific instructional programs that are for dyslexia. And we don't see any reason why Peninsula School District shouldn't have those kinds of tools and training available to our students. So we're gonna share some of those recommendations, but I encourage you to take a closer look and reach out to our group if you have questions. So thank you.
Thanks. Hi, Kelly Jo Perot. I'm a member of the Gig Harbor Peninsula Area Dyslexia Parent Group, and I'm here in support of this proposal. James Clear is a best-selling author who writes about building good habits. He wisely said, "We do not rise to the level of our goals, we fall to the level of our systems." This board has set the lofty goal of 100% of third graders reading at or above grade level by 2026. I'm here to remind you that this district does not have the systems in place to achieve this goal. Close to 40% of our students are underachieving, which reflects an outrageous waste of human potential. Structured literacy in all classrooms, providing all staff with proper professional development, and offering our Tier 3 students intensive intervention, which could help them close the gap, would be a great start in working toward achieving this goal. Historically, the district has chosen not to offer proper interventions and firmly believes the programs they are offering are enough, and they stand by this, even in the courtroom. The 39% of students are proof that these programs are ineffective. These results sure make it feel like what the district is really saying is that they believe in appropriate education for some students, but not all students. I was invited and welcomed to the district's 100% Reading Task Force Committee and do appreciate that the district officials have come around to the idea that they need to evaluate the reading programs it has in place to offer students and also begin their journey to understand reading disabilities and what's behind the science of reading. Our district reading leadership team purchased Eckery and Linda Mood Bell due to holes in current programs. Our kids don't need more. They need unity and consistency between grade levels, content areas, and schools district-wide. We must also remember that not only do the dyslexic children in our district continue to struggle with academics, but the scarier part of the struggle is the social and emotional side of dealing with dyslexia, which is often ignored. Students experience anger, stress, embarrassment, shame, guilt, isolation, anxiety, low self-esteem, depression, and more. By putting this proposal we bring before you into action, you can help alleviate many, if not all, of the problems these students face. The idea that students could be assessed early and supported with appropriate intervention, that their academic and social emotional difficulties could largely be prevented, like what a gift, what are we waiting for? Learning to read isn't magic. Learning to read takes incredible effort. I was listening to a book the other day and it talked about how it took 2,000 years to crack the alphabetic code, and we expect kids to read in 2,000 days. We realize there is no one curriculum, no silver bullet, but we also know that when you offer teachers a way to teach explicitly and systematically, students will and can learn to read. I can't tell you how many times over the course of the last 3 months I have heard, when we know better, we do better. Well, we know better, let's do better, starting today. Thank you.
Hi, Michael Perot, and I'm with the Dyslexia Parent Group. This proposal that we provided each one of you is 5 pages, and it touches on curriculum, professional development, implementation and fidelity, communication, additional steps, and then other areas of concern that we didn't get into. We have strong beliefs in, but we wanted to focus. It is intended to provide consistent instruction for K-12, all students from K to 12 across the district, regardless what building they are in, or what tier they're in, 1, 2, or 3. So when they transition from school to school, they will get a seamless process. Right now, it's a mishmash of whoever, whatever. The supplemental reading program list that I got May 4th last year, listening to your school improvement plans, many programs that are being used today aren't on that list. So they were selected since May, but it's an informal process. Everybody points the other direction on who picked it, why did we pick it? And so that really touches on one of the, it's number 4, communication, and it's throughout. And that's the lack of communication with the community, with the parents. It was mentioned the 100% Reading Task Force, which is great. It's doing great work. My understanding, there's 6 parents on there. They're very qualified. I think at least 3 of them are here tonight. Unfortunately, there's no mention of it on your website. I've heard nothing in the media. I've not heard no press releases or anything about it. I mean, I would think people would be standing up and telling all about it, but that's not what's happening. There's not any, I would like to say there was lacking meaningful engagement in the process for the public, but there's absolutely no engagement of the public. The public doesn't even know it exists. When I worked for the city of Gig Harbor, committees like this were called secret meetings. And people got a lot of flack for it, and for good reason. If this committee moves forward, this 100% literacy committee moves forward and adopts programs, they could be the best ones, but you're not going to get buy-in from the community, from the parents, or from the teachers. Don't even know the committee's taking place. They never had a chance to engage in the process. So I encourage you to look this over, ask questions if you have them, and we would like you to adopt this approach. It's going to ensure kids can read, and there's nothing more fundamental to what this school district does than to make sure all kids read. Thank you, and appreciate your service.
Sorry, did you provide copies? Just Tanya has this for all of us. Okay, thank you. Okay. We are going to move on to item 7.1, our reports. We have a financial presentation from our CFO, Ashley Murphy.
Okay, I want to start by introducing here to my left. This is Jamie Ledesma. Jamie is our current director of finance as well. So this presentation is going to be super brief, but we're both going to sort of speak to some of the items on these slides. In all reality, this just sort of piggybacks off the more in-depth budget presentation that was given just before the start of this school year in August. During that time frame, we had dug really in-depth into our current budget, revenues and expenditures and shortfalls that we would be seeing. And so this explains that in more depth within the coming slides. So first we wanted to start by talking about enrollment. Enrollment is the biggest driver for school district funding. The chart on the left is the last 4 school years. That is our enrollment. Back in 2019, so the 2019-20 school year, that is the year that the pandemic hit. So you can see where the overall enrollment of this district was at that time. The next year is that year of closure, but then it was opening, and then it was a remote hybrid plan. And you can see where the enrollment dipped to where we are this year. So we did start to increase our enrollment from where we were last year. But the caveat with this is we have been receiving funding at that 2019 level enrollment for the last 2 years, okay? And the reason we've been receiving the enrollment at that level is because there was specific federal and state mandates as to your class sizes, the spacing between students and such, and so they needed to continue funding at the higher levels so that we could do that within the schools. At this point, that funding is sunsetting, and we must right size to what our funding will be going into next year. Do you want to speak to some of the other pieces?
Yeah. I'd like to add, the first sentence on the side says that we have unstable enrollment. So while we have dipped well below what we were in 2019, we have recovered some of the students in the last 2 years. However, like Ashley mentioned, because we've been able to collect funds on the GO students from 2019, we will notice a difference and a shortfall in the revenues that we project into 23-24. I also wanted to add, it's hard to see on the slide here, but we have some benchmark line items as to percentages of various demographics for our district. So low income, language learner. When I came on board in September, I was hopeful to help identify some new revenue streams that might help lighten the blow. Many of our surrounding districts are able to collect on federal and state grants that we aren't able to based on our demographic. So I just wanted to add that.
Perfect. Okay. So when we're looking at our overall revenues as a whole, so right now at this point of the year, what we're doing is we're forecasting the revenue driving tools that districts utilize to determine actual revenues for the next year. They're not yet available because they don't become available until after the legislative session has ended, because that determines what our funding models are going to look like in the future year. So as we go through this process, we look at what are our revenues now and what type of changes do we anticipate going into next year. So what we do between Jamie and I and Superintendent Barr, amongst other staff, is we start tracking those legislative updates. We track them very closely, and each week as they change, we start re-looking at our numbers. What kind of potential impact would this be? And what can we expect to see in return if this bill were to pass the way that it is written? One of the things that we were able to come up with very early on is that overall, we have a $29 million basic education shortfall. This means there's a shortfall in state funding. It doesn't mean that there's an overall budget shortfall of $29 million. Just the state is funding us at about $29 million less than what we would actually need to be considered fully funded. With that, we utilize our local levy to help support that offset, and we use federal dollars that come in. So those two help bridge that gap of that shortfall. We are projecting at this point less federal grants and less levy revenue going into 23 and 24, primarily because of the loss of that hold harmless language for collection of local levy from pre-pandemic numbers, and because all of the federal funding regarding the pandemic and the additional state dollars that were also available would no longer be available. With that, we have determined that budget reductions of approximately $12 million would help mitigate the deficit spending projections and realign our spending to focus on strategic plan initiatives and our levy commitments. Do you have anything you want to add to this?
I think you captured it pretty well.
Perfect. Okay. So this goes into a little bit more detail regarding our legislative bills that we've been tracking and our budgetary impacts. Okay, so one of the biggest impacts that we're seeing as a district right now is in what is called an experience factor. So back post McCleary, the legislative body turned around and they divvied out 4% additional funding for salaries to districts whose teaching staff were above a state median average. The bill at the time that it was written was not super clear as to what would happen with that experience factor or how everything was being calculated. This year, they were set to review that. At the time that they reviewed it, they have determined that Peninsula School District is no longer eligible and they would be taking that funding. Now, what I will say, that would be approximately a loss of $2.5 million going into next year. Superintendent Barr, and I'm sure she's going to be speaking to it later, but she has been hard at work trying to lobby and really work on getting a hold harmless or a step down for this loss. And so we are still trying to push to be held whole in this area, but at this point, it's sort of up in the air as to what would actually occur with that. Special education, there was multiple House bills and Senate bills that have been heard over the last few months. We do know that as a state, special education is not being fully funded. This is something that most school districts come forward and state. Right now, in this year's budget, we have a $5 million special education shortfall. So that $5 million has to come out of other state funding or from local levy in order to make that program whole. This is based upon student needs. The bills that are being heard, there's some possible significant impacts through what's called a basic education swap. So the state hears from school districts that they're not fully funding basic or special education. So then what they do is they turn around and they tell us, okay, well, don't take the dollars from local levy. You're going to take the dollars from your general apportionment that we're giving you to fund your schools. The problem is that if we had excess funding there, we would be using it for that. So what they're doing is they're shifting the responsibility and telling us to take it out of the dollars that they're already giving us. In addition to that, at the time there was a lot of other pieces of this bill that would have got us closer to being fully funded. They've been stripped. And so at this point, the entire packages that are being seen are a fraction, about a third or less, of what was originally proposed to actually fully fund special education. There was also a bill on the floor about prejudgment interest. In reality, what this is about is looking at if cases come forward multiple years down the line regarding, let's just say, inappropriate contact with a student. A district could be held liable for interest on whatever the settlement is from the date of the original incident. And because there's no statute of limitations on a lot of these situations, districts could be liable for 20, 30, 40 years worth of interest. So it is crippling. The bill wasn't technically meant for school districts. It's meant for other public entities, but we weren't specifically exempted. At this point, it looks like the bill may have died on the floor, but this isn't the first time they've brought it up. So this is something that we're tracking for future legislative sessions to determine whether or not they're going to bring it forward again. Pupil transportation, I know I've said in a few other presentations, we're currently operating with a shortfall of state dollars in the amount of about $2.5 million. We were actually really hopeful, I think Donette's in the audience, we were really hopeful that they were going to push forward a bill, and they had at the time, that would bring additional dollars into the district at approximately about $1 million. Of course, that got stripped, and instead, we don't even know what we'll be receiving, because what they have stated is a team needs to get together and determine the funding formulas for school district transportation. So at this time, I don't know what the financial impact would be for transportation. We just know that we have a $2.5 million deficit. Transitional kindergarten, this is one that we're going to be watching over the next few legislative sessions. We are not anticipating a financial impact in the upcoming school year, but if the bill is passed the way that it is written, we would have financial impacts in the following school years. But our commitment is to this program and keeping this program alive. So if something were to happen, we would make commitments to not close the program, but to find other funding sources to offset those costs. Local levy. We are super grateful and appreciative to our voters for passing our levy recently. That helped mitigate a lot of the shortfalls that we were going to be facing. But our local levy is capped, and it is capped at an amount, a per pupil amount of $2,500 plus the inflationary factor per student. When you're capped at a per pupil amount and your enrollment has decreased, so does what you can collect in your levy. So we are anticipating being able to collect less levy dollars because the hold harmless language in regards to collecting at the higher amount sunsets. And as of next year, we will be collecting for the students that we have within our school. And then at the same time, we have the end of our pandemic era federal funds. So the additional federal dollars, both through ESSER and some other grant programs that were available for school districts to offset costs seen during the pandemic, which also had to do with some staffing costs, has now ended. We've spent those funds, and so we need to make sure that we are aligning our overall revenues to where we expect to be next year with the lack of those funds.
Yeah, I'll add. I just wanted to add, as for the ESSER dollars, we actually had spent those mostly in full at the conclusion of the last fiscal year. So we had just a little bit for the 22-23 school year and budget no ESSER for next year. And with the levy, I'm sure this has been discussed in past board meetings. With the $2,500 per student cap, that really does limit us compared to some of our peers in surrounding districts that have the $2.50 per thousand of assessed value. I think Ashley had calculated at one point, if we were able to use that cap, we'd be collecting closer to 80 million versus the 27 million that was approved. So again, thank you to the voters. Thank you for passing those levies, because we would be looking at a greater shortfall had we not.
So I thank you, and I want to thank both of you, as well as all of the staff, really having the details. I just wanted to share a little bit additional legislative information. The forecast came out, here I'm looking, was released on Monday for the state, indicating a slowing of revenue growth and down $1 billion over the next 2 biennium. And so just hot off the press, we were going to have our Charlie Brown, who is our governmental aficionado. He is actually delving into the information that just came out right before the board meeting. But just a few points of interest, I think, that is important to note and pertinent for this evening, that special education, although we were looking at $1 billion for the districts throughout the state, really the Senate just released their operating budget this afternoon, and they were looking at $372 million. The House, I believe, is in the high hundreds.
Correct.
And we are $5 million as one district. And so it will be woefully a much smaller number than we were hoping for. And the pupil transportation looks like, and I'm looking at Donette back there, it looks like the pupil transportation legislation is tied to special passenger safety net program directly around McKinney-Vento homeless students, and not just to and from like we were hoping. And so that is another tie there. And they're also looking at limiting the inflationary factor, so there's data around that, but also the regionalization and experience factor, the very thing that you just talked about, the 4%. We have amazing representatives and senator in our area who are I just cannot speak to, I mean, they are amazing, and they're so, they're working with us because we're trying to understand the data and the difference between median and average. So I'm learning because they are rebasing since McCleary. And in this information right here, it says discussions on experience factor are ongoing about hold harmless funding or some other support for districts that are going backwards, which is us. However, there is no contemplation of protection in the Senate's proposal. And so we have to really be, I mean, I just appreciate so much our team for doing the really hard work, and we know that this is difficult, but the reality is the fiscal atmosphere has changed. And so thank you. If there's any questions for them.
Okay.
Kind of going back to enrollment, since that is really the big chunk. I'm sure, like the rest of us, have been watching what's going on in neighboring districts. To reiterate what Creston says, we're extremely grateful to the fact that you guys have been looking at this for over a year now. So we're not in a position of being taken over by our ESD, which is happening to other districts. But the one thing that has taken me by surprise has been that enrollment population projections have almost reversed in a lot of areas in the Puget Sound. And I know a lot of us have been paying attention to that, which is really, it seems like in a very short amount of time has reversed. You know, we kept talking about how Pierce County, and then our district in particular, was one of the highest growth areas. But then currently right now, right across the Sound, we have places where they are reversing and they're seeing decreases and they're closing schools. So have you guys looked at, or I'm sure you have, but maybe going forward, just understanding the population growth, if that's slowing and what that looks like for incoming kinders?
Correct. We've done some work with a state demographer, and that's specifically what he looks into is birth trends in our area and across the state as a whole. And one of the really interesting things that came out recently from him, and I know that it was actually published in a news article as well, is the fact that our statewide demographer experts, they're stumped at this point, because even while we were going through this pandemic, they expected the kids to return once we were out of masks, once we were back in a classroom, once we were back to status quo, and they didn't. So statewide, schools are seeing a decrease in overall enrollment with kids not being there. That is impacting obviously a lot of districts. We are lucky that we did see an increase for this current year. The problem is we can't trust our past trends now. And so when it comes to projecting out for future years, we can look at what we would have anticipated, and then we have to scale it back. Because one of the risky things in school districts, and one of the risky things that can get school districts in trouble and taken over by an ESD, is overshooting your enrollment projections. Because from September through December, they fund you at those projection amounts, and in January, you have to start paying it back if you overshot those projections. So you staff for higher enrollment that never comes in January. And so we are taking a more conservative approach. We're surveying our surrounding districts. We're looking at their data. What are they seeing as far as increases or decreases? One of the things that has been interesting is that a lot of elementary schools across the state, they saw increases in their first, second grade classes. They saw decreases in kindergarten, and they saw things stay the same in fourth and fifth grade. Middle schools across the state are seeing decreases. Across the state, our middle school students particularly, they did not return after the pandemic. High schoolers did. And so it's looking at each one of those trend factors and having to pull in our information here for Peninsula School District particularly, and then doing our best educated guess at where we will be next year based upon past trends and current social constraints that we're seeing across the state. So, but it is definitely a difficult thing to look into currently, even for individuals that do it for a living every single day.
I'm just going to say, you know, the board was sort of given a hint a year ago by Karen that we were going to have some budget shortfall in this school year based on the fact that we were losing those ESSER funds. In school districts across the state, they're feeling the same pain. It's not just a Peninsula School District. I think the thing we didn't know about was the fact that once our legislature went into session, they took away the experience factor, which we weren't expecting. They took away the special ed, which we weren't expecting. They're taking away pupil transportation, which we weren't expecting. They threatened to take away funding for our TK program, which we weren't expecting, and they were throwing prejudgment interest on us. Again, in my 10 years on the school board, the state legislature has failed in their paramount duty to fund education. They have let our school districts down across the state. Our state house, our state senate, and the governor have failed in their number one paramount duty to fund education. When we met with them a couple weeks ago with our state legislatures, we told them that that was their paramount duty. They had a huge budget surplus, and they failed to give that to education. Years ago, the state lottery was established, and the money from that was supposed to go to education, and they redirected it to all their other pet projects. The state has failed in her paramount duty to fund education. When we were meeting with one of our reps, state legislators, no name, a proposition was given to us that might help fund future education models. And I almost fell out of my chair. I was like, you're kidding me. Because there's no guarantee that you would stand that up to fund education and then you just move it again. So I'm just saying it's really unfortunate this is happening across the state. Some of our smaller school districts are going to feel it worse. Even though they're going to lose per capita less, they're going to feel it worse. I think Seattle's losing 120, 150 million. We're losing less than that, but the fact we're losing our experience factor when our neighbor, South Kitsap, isn't, makes zero sense to me. You know, and I know why Bainbridge Island isn't losing their money, but anyway, I don't really have a question other than after this year, where are your forecasts for next school year once we get through this first thing?
That's a great question, David, and I appreciate that question because ultimately a lot of the work that we did this year was around fixing the situation as a whole. You said Seattle School District. Seattle School District put together a plan that they would do 127-ish million this year and then close to 100 million next year. We put together a plan that we can become sustainable through these reductions this year, and then we can keep that sustained through future years so that we won't be sitting back here at this time next year discussing this once again. We do it by taking a conservative approach to our budgeting and ensuring that we're really aligning our fiscal and human resources, our staff, to where our strategic plan states our priorities are and where our levy commitments are. And so that view was thread through all of our discussions and through every ounce of work that we did through this process. So we fixed the $12 million shortfall, and we did it in a way that we can repair our declining fund balance, and then we can remain sustainable in future years, assuming the state legislature does not come through and start taking more stuff away. I just want to put that caveat out there. Yep.
Just, you talked about the two different ways our levy would pay, the 2,500 and then the based on the assessed evaluation. I understand that, we do, but you kind of went over it fast, and I'm not sure the public kind of gets why we did one over the other. So maybe you could explain that just so that everybody would understand why we can't get that larger amount.
Yeah, so post McCleary, when they passed the law changes regarding levy collection, they created a sort of an and/or category in which you have to take the lesser of the calculated value of $2.50 per thousand of assessed value for your area, or the $2,500 per pupil. So in reality, it's because they, in order to do the McCleary fix, they started levying a tax on local citizens. They collect that money at the state level and they redistribute that to districts that are considered property poor. Peninsula School District is not a property poor district. Therefore, those state level taxes get pooled and redistributed to other districts. They don't stay within Peninsula School District. Even though they don't stay within Peninsula School District, that cap was put in there so that other districts can't levy additional dollars from their community. So as of a year and a half ago, this district had to switch over based upon our property values, and we're now capped at the per pupil value.
And if I could add,
Yeah.
Like Ashley talked about on the legislative slide with the special education funding swap, it's very similar to what occurred back with McCleary decision. For those who are in the audience and aren't aware, the whole argument was that the state should fully fund basic education, and that we shouldn't have these inequitable levies based on different jurisdictions throughout the state. So that's how they instituted those caps. So the idea is that it lessens the burden on the taxpayers. So the same idea with the special education funding, rather than providing more funding for the special education program, they would provide less basic education dollars and it would go to that. So I just wanted to add that piece.
Okay. Is that all the questions? If any of you guys want to go into school district finance, let me know. It's fun.
Yes.
Oh.
ESD bad, and like, why would it be bad if it took us over? Because I actually do not know.
So an ESD is an educational service district. So we are part of the Puget Sound ESD, which is located up in Tukwila. Is it Tukwila or Renton? Renton, yes. And so they oversee, I don't know how many, 35, I'm just making this up, 35 school districts. And we all go there for support. So there's a superintendent that sits up there. And they also have their own fiscal, so they are to support school districts. There's 9 of them throughout the state, okay? They are not our fiscal agent. So if a school district has proven that they are fiscally insolvent, there's no money in the bank, or that they can't meet their payroll, okay? Because we make payroll every month. If they can't do that, then the state basically comes in and says, you can't do anything anymore. We're gonna let the ESD do everything. So they come in, they're like, wouldn't be an auditor, it would be like a controller.
Yeah.
And so then they would do everything. But the local control, right now, it lies within the school board and myself. All of that is taken away financially and other decisions. And so we don't want that, and that's not responsible. However, there are school districts in that situation at this time. And I'm not going to answer any more specific questions.
So parents wouldn't have any control if that happened?
Parents wouldn't have control if that happened?
Parents wouldn't have control
Parents
over,
wouldn't have a say. There's the word I was looking for.
certainly not financially.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Not financially.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, perfect.
I just wanted to say thank you to your team for doing all of this work, and really for doing the work of keeping us informed along the way. We had this coming to, I don't know if that's, someone's giving feedback.
Okay.
Anyway, for keeping us informed through your presentations over the course of the year, this is not a surprise. We were very clear with the community, but we need for the levies, and again, goodness, thank you to our community for supporting that. I think we are taking care of our own within the Peninsula School District. I also want to say thank you to the entire district for the work that was done last year in developing the strategic plan, because that is our guidepost for really being able to prioritize where we align our fiscal and marketing expenses. So it all goes together, and it's something to look at this year as we are finding we need to rely on ourselves as our kids and ourselves to be our best advocates. So thank you for your time and what's going on for certainly get through this.
Perfect. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
It's my mic. Is there a volume? No, it's this thing. It's my magnetic personality.
Sounds like there's feedback. Yeah, IT guy in the room, I think.
Yeah, he's here.
Oh, here he is.
Okay,
It was that one.
excellent. Okay, so for item 8, old business, we have none. We're going to roll into new business, starting with item 9.1, board committee reports. Does anyone have committee reports? Specifically committee, not comments.
No, we haven't met the Arts Council.
Okay.
Met since last week.
Nope, no committee reports. Okay, so let's move on to item 9.2, Resolution 23-03, the WASDA weighted vote removal. So I'm going to, if you just bear with me for a second, I got to get back into my, I'm going to read it, and then we can have some discussion about it, and then we'll take a vote on it. So the resolution reads, the title is WASDA Weighted Vote Removal Resolution. Whereas in Washington State, any school district over 2,000 pupils or more is a school district of the first class, and whereas in Washington State, any school district under 2,000 pupils is a school district of the second class. And whereas there are approximately 295 school districts in Washington State, and whereas there are approximately 95 first-class districts in Washington State, and whereas there are approximately 200 second-class districts in Washington State, and whereas decisions and advocacy made by WASDA, the Washington State School Directors Association, impacts every school district, and whereas Article 11, Section 3 of the WASDA bylaws includes the following language for a weighted vote during General Assembly. Quote, when a weighted vote is called, delegates shall receive the number of votes as set forth in a vote chart based on student enrollment on the first day in October, unquote. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the Board of Directors of the Peninsula School District does hereby move to remove Article 11, Section 3, titled Weighted Vote from the WASDA bylaws. Be it further resolved that Article 11, Section 2, Item E, be revised to state only, quote, every delegate shall have one vote, unquote. So just a little bit of background information. If you'll remember back to last fall, David and I were talking about attending the General Assembly in which WASDA members get to vote on the priorities that we as a collective group push in Olympia each year. And the way it works is any district can put forth a priority that they want to be considered. And in order for it to move forward to be on WASDA's priority list, we all vote on it. And based on the population of your school district, you get a weighted vote. So for us, I believe we get...
The first round you don't, second round.
Okay, well, it's a pretty laborious process. So first round, everybody gets one vote, and then it goes, I don't really know why it would go to a second vote, but large school districts like Seattle, Spokane, Bellevue, they get many, many more votes than we do. Peninsula School District, I think we have 9. Some of the smaller districts only get one vote. So what happens is essentially the agendas of the large school districts get pushed by this collective unit that represents all school districts in the state. So there are several school board presidents around the state who have got together to look at how we can make it a more equitable process. When I read this resolution as it was pitched, I said, you know what, I fully support this plan, but I'm not going to read that. I think the second class, first class language is sour grapes, and that's just really unprofessional. And I didn't know, because I didn't know my homework at the time, that is not our language. It's no one's language. It's written in Washington state law that they consider small districts to be of second class. We don't fall in that category, but it kind of makes my blood boil for districts that do. We do not have any second-class students in this state, and that needs to go away. So therefore, we have brought forth this resolution. And so this is not a vote of the legislature. This is a vote that will go to WASDA. So we will vote on this in our own General Assembly. It has to be approved by 5 school districts have to pass this resolution or one similar in order to get on the agenda, and then it will move forward to be discussed in the WASDA, I think it's the Legislative Committee, and then in the General Assembly, it has to be passed by a 2/3 majority vote, and that's really where the challenge will probably lie, because historically, the small districts that don't get represented, these second-class districts, don't even show up because they don't get heard. So you've heard about David speaking last fall. David, we do have a heavier vote than a lot of districts, and David has used that vote in the past to advocate on behalf of small districts as well, just to get some of their priorities heard as well. So that's the background, and I will open it now for discussion before we vote on it.
Would you be okay with me elaborating on what you just said a little bit?
Of course, please.
So I've been one of the school district's legislative reps for my entire 10 years on the board, and we've had turnover and we've had other reps. Right, currently, the rep is Natalie. The other rep, prior to Natalie, was Deborah Christodawson. But I've been in the role for 10 years. And one of the things we do is annually we go to the Day on the Hill and lobby with our legislatures, like we recently did a couple weeks ago. But the other one is we can attend legislative conferences. In the old days, there were 2. There was a legislative conference and but they had two conferences a year, one for legislative and one for resolutions. And I have served on the WASDA resolutions and legislative committees over the years. And then to save time and money, they've combined them to one General Assembly. Like Natalie said, over those years, most of the time we met in person. And the way it would work is hundreds of us, it would be in a big room with the WASDA folks going through traditionally 150, 185 WASDA positions that we'd have to vote on and move around in different orders, maybe even eliminate or add some. But the first round, as she said, whoever showed up, there's usually 100, 120 school districts show up out of 295. And everyone gets one vote. And depending on what it is, everyone votes and it could pass or fail. But if the vote doesn't go the way the bigger school districts want, and even we could do it. I mean, our school district, actually even a little school district doing it, been what the issue is. If it fails or doesn't go their way the first time, a school district can call for a weighted vote. Traditionally, it's one of the larger school districts that does it because they don't like the way it's going to impact their district. And I like the fact that, Natalie and I have been talking about this a couple of days, that when people over the past couple of years have really been pushing equity and education, traditionally in the last couple of years, equity has been pushed more around racial and gender issues. But if you're looking at true equity, there are no, like you said, second-class school districts or first-class school districts. So Granger School District or, give me the green. Huh? Yeah, Wahkiakum. I mean, I at the conference last year, I sat with a guy and there's only maybe 40 students in their whole school district. But, they're still a school district. They share schools with other districts. But the first round, you get one vote, okay? The case in point that I brought up last fall was, we were reviewing all of our positions and a smaller school district put forth the position, and it was simply that parents and families matter in the education of a kid. That's all it was. Most people think that's common sense. But some of the school districts, Seattle, Shoreline, Everett, big ones, pushed back. So the first vote, it passed. Yep, that sounds like a good plan. Well, they call for a weighted vote. So I think we get 7 or 8. I'm just making 9 maybe. But Seattle gets 15. Wahkiakum and Granger and some of those small, they get 1 vote. Okay? So when a weighted vote, when we were doing it in person, they call for a weighted vote. It's really weird. They shut all the doors. If you aren't in the room when they call for a weighted vote, you're locked out. They shut all the doors and only the people that are in the room get to vote. They've been doing it via Zoom, so they can't do that. But the weighted vote, now they take another vote. They have comment, discussion, and then they take the weighted vote. So our vote counts as 7, Granger 1, all those little districts. Let me just read. There's 200 second-class school districts, less than 2,000 students, and 95 with more, okay? 200 of our school districts across the state get 1 vote. Okay, so the rest get weighted vote, 4, 7, 15. So what then has to happen, you have to get 5 school districts to agree to do a weighted vote. And I'm sorry I'm belaboring this, but just wanted you to know what happens. So we took a second vote on that parent families matter, and it failed because you had those big school districts voted no. We're like, what? How did this happen? It just makes sense because we're always talking about family involvement. We need more parent involvement, but it failed. So we were really not happy. Fortunately, the Robert's Rules of Order is this thick, and to know them all is really challenging. But one person in one school district called for a reconsideration vote. This person knew their Robert's Rules, called for a reconsideration vote. I've been on those conferences 10 years. First time that's happened in 10 years. Was the board, all the bigwigs, we need to take a 5-minute break because they didn't know what to do. So then they came in and we talked. So we need to take a 20-minute break because they needed to figure out the rules. And they came back, we need 5 school districts to agree for a reconsideration vote, of which we were one of the 5. So then we went into more discussion. We were saying, this is ridiculous. This makes sense. This is going to be in the news. It's going to create all kinds of bad press. And so we took another vote. Everyone got one vote. And it passed again. Okay? And Seattle or Shoreline, I can't remember which one, called for a weighted vote. And I'm like, you're kidding me. Fortunately, one of those other schools with some votes heard the discussion and how it could be blowback, and it passed the second time through. But we argued fiercely for it. But it goes back to what she said. Just because a big school district doesn't like what it is, doesn't mean that they get to control the whole state. And 200 small school districts, which are often negatively impacted by those decisions. Some of these little school districts really suffer under some of the things that the big school districts push. And so I'm really, really happy that we're doing this, and I hope the board will vote yes to remove this. So thank you for the time.
I feel like we need a campfire and some marshmallows. I just want to point out, yes, we are, this is a little bit of a sheepdog mentality. We're looking out for the districts around us, but it does impact us significantly when we're talking about things like the way we are funded for transportation, which is different from everybody else, or the way we are funded for our seniority factor or regionalization. So there's a lot that is right here. And
there have been past years where this school district, myself and the other ledge reps, have argued on our behalf that benefit this school district, not even the whole state, and we've lost due to the weighted vote. And it's frustrating when we're out there advocating for our school district and we get voted down because of the weighted vote. So,
yeah. Any other questions or comment from the rest of the board?
Just a comment. I've always been really outraged by this ever since you explained the weighted vote process to us, and I'm just really proud to have at least the chance to vote on it, and we'll see what happens.
Can I add one thing? So this isn't about that. You made a comment about the challenge of getting this. So I reached out to the president of WASDA today, Tim Garshow, and asked him about that, because I said, how can we get this word out to the state, across the state, to let all the school districts know about this? Well, WASDA, he said, we're Switzerland. We have to stay neutral, okay? But just like a lot of places, you don't need 2/3 of all 295 school districts to vote to do this. You only need 2/3 of who's at the conference. So if we have 140 school districts represented at the assembly, 2/3 of them would have to vote yes on this. So we don't need to go out and ask all 295 people to show up, is what I'm saying. So he clarified that today.
Oh, okay.
So I'm sure there'll be some vocal people at that assembly to push to get this passed. So I did look into that.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Okay. Tanya, it's not written in my script, but we can vote, yes? I said it's not written in my script. Can I just go off the cuff and call for a vote? Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Oh, yes, you did. Never mind. I'm sorry.
Do we have to do a motion?
Okay. Is there a motion to approve Resolution 2303?
I will proudly make a motion to pass Resolution 23-03, WASDA weighted vote removal resolution.
Thank you.
I'll second.
It has been moved by David and seconded by Lori. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion is carried. Resolution 2303 has been approved. So we will get that off. Thank you. We'll get that sent off to our regional group tomorrow morning. Okay, next on the list is Resolution 2302, the Reduced Educational Program. So let me back out of this and read it. Okay, Peninsula School District, number 401, 2023-24 Reduced Educational Program, Resolution number 2302. Whereas the Board of Directors has reviewed the report of the Superintendent concerning anticipated revenue and expenditures for the 2023-24 fiscal year, and the number of anticipated and confirmed resignations from and vacancies in classified staff positions. And whereas the Board of Directors has determined that for the 2023-24 school year, anticipated financial resources are not adequate to maintain the district's educational program and services at substantially the same level as the current year. And whereas the Board of Directors has determined that a financial necessity exists to adopt a reduced educational program for the 2023-24 school year, requiring a reduction in the current number of classified staff positions. And whereas the board has considered budgetary factors and work available, including the programs, facilities, and staffing of positions necessary to best accomplish the educational objectives of the district, as well as program reorganization by supervisors other than board decision. Whereas even if additional funding in excess of current projections becomes available, the Board of Directors desires to exercise its discretion to allocate funds in the best interest of the district's educational program. And now, therefore, be it resolved by the Board of Directors of the Peninsula School District as follows. Number one, the board adopts a reduced educational program, which includes reductions in the positions identified in Exhibit A to this resolution. Number two, the superintendent is directed to take such action as may be required by law to give appropriate notices to classified employees to implement the above described reduction and reorganization of the educational program and reduction in classified staff, and to lay off, reduce, reassign, and transfer staff members as required under applicable collective bargaining agreements and the district policies and procedures, to continue discussions with the appropriate bargaining units, and to implement this reduced program for the 2023-24 school year. Adopted by the Board of Directors of Peninsula School District at an open public meeting held March 23rd, 2023, notice of which was given as required by law, the following directors being present and voting therefore. Peninsula School District Board of Directors. Okay, so going into some brief discussion about this is basically what you heard tonight in our financial presentation. And I guess just to start off the conversation, that this is really the responsibility of the board. So if you look at the duties of a school board, we are responsible for the budget. It's their taxpayer dollars. We're responsible for the superintendent and the overall strategic visioning of the district. So some of the work that we do is really fun, and we get to be inventive and innovative and dream big. And some of the work that we do has to be very difficult, but we are responsible with taxpayer dollars, and we are responsible with how we align those resources in support of our children and all of our students and our staff members. And so this is one of those moments where it's not fun, but I think you have seen and heard evidence that this is happening all over the state, and we are incredibly grateful to the staff that we have for being in front of this, because there are districts, as we have mentioned already, that have been taken over by the ESDs, which are not bad. They are also doing their jobs in that situation. But we, in order to remain solvent, which we are, this is a decision that is probably necessary once we take the vote on it. So I will open it up to any discussion or comments that the rest of you might have.
I think we just need to comment also that we have done everything we could to keep it as far away from the classrooms as we can. This is painful, and hopefully we can backfill some of these positions later when things are in better position. But it's been a very painful process.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve Resolution 2302?
I'll move to approve it.
Is there a second?
I'll take the second.
It has been moved by Jennifer and seconded by Chuck. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion is carried. Resolution 2302 has been approved. And I apologize, I did not ask our students if they had any questions about either of those resolutions. So if you have anything to add. You've heard a lot about it. Yeah, I think we all have. It's been in discussion for a year. Okay? Yeah, exactly. Thank you. We should have just led with that. Okay, we're going to move on to item number 11, board discussion. Well, you know what? Hold on, did I skip something? Yes, I wrote my notes all around it. Number 10, superintendent's report.
All right, I'm going to go quickly here, but I do have to shout out, we had our Women in Leadership yesterday for the Puget Sound, for King County and Pierce County, and we had probably 75 to 80, 100. I'm looking back at some of the staff, maybe 100 women leaders. But we highlighted our CEO leadership group. Mayor Tracy Markley came, Jennifer Stiefel, the president of Heritage Distillery, Gig Harbor Chamber of Commerce Executive Director Miriam Batstone, and the Norwegian Consulate, Lisa Christensen, came and spoke about the power of collaboration and the linkage to education. So we had an opportunity to talk a little bit about transitional kindergarten and in the future, all of the synergy and the work that we can do together around high school and having some student exchanges and just the power of strong, positive schools in a community and how I work with all 4 of them on an ongoing basis, and I know, Natalie, you and I, with the sister cities, so you're on the hook for next year. But it was a really powerful conversation, and I think it was an unusual conversation for many of the educators there to look at business and the linkage with education and how powerful communities, people move to communities for schools, for good jobs, for amazing places to live, for parks, all of those things. So it was really, really powerful, and I really appreciated their companionship. And I did want to shout out to all of my staff, all of our staff from Peninsula School District, because they did all of the decorations, and it was called Wilderness, and it was amazing. Lisa Ray, Natalie, who else was there? There were a variety of different staff, but they were so darling. So they're on the hook for decorations now forever. And so more to come on our conference, on our Welcome Back in the summer. I want to thank Avery and Katie for being part of our Superintendent Student Advisory. The first time we brought all 3 high school students teams together, and thank you, Natalie, for being part of that, but asked them questions. They had an opportunity to do some bridge building and some really powerful conversations, and that was the first of what I would like to do next year, at least 3, potentially 4, but really bringing all of the high school students together. We have had some, rivalry, but the rivalry has gotten a little bit beyond, as Avery said. Can we just get along? So bringing the students to the table. So I was really, really happy. And Tanya, thank you for really kind of spearheading that, and all of the people that came, all of the adults. The adults really weren't allowed to talk. It was really about students. So it was really powerful, and I'm looking at formalizing that for next year. So sorry, Alex. Next time. I know. I don't know why you weren't on the invite. I had an opportunity to go, and I know that I've put this in social media, but I just have to say that it was the coolest thing. Out of the Peninsula Reads, I read Where the Wild Things Are. And when I went out to Pioneer, the students made an inference. Well, actually, they told me. They said, Mrs. Barr, the moon, so the story, this is, sorry if you haven't read the story, but the story is that Max gets in trouble, and then he goes away to a land, and then he stays there for a long time, and then he comes back, and in theory, it's the same night. Well, they pointed out that the moon was different when he left as when he returned. And I have read that story out loud for so long, and I've never had students point that out, and I was like, I don't know what that means. I mean, you came back, it was a full moon. He left, it was a crescent. I don't know. So they investigated it. So I was invited to the moon book party at Pioneer with the kinder and first graders, and they had this whole explanation, and they told me it had to at least be 21 days. That's what they told me. And their parents came, they made books. I haven't gotten my book yet, have I? Oh, I will bring it. I was just so thrilled. And those are the moments that as a superintendent,
if I could bottle that up and give that to every single grown-up out here, you just cannot underestimate the power of a child changing the lives of grown-ups. So anyway, I'm a little teary about it. I'm still so excited about it. So, and in addition, I have been on the KP, and I will be going out this Saturday as well. But I have to say, the crab feed on the KP, okay, Chuck, you came after all the fun. So we had so much fun. That was amazing. I didn't know. Okay, we're going to eat at it next time. We ate before we went because we didn't know what we were getting into, and my husband and I. Yeah, I know. So anyway, we learned that we should not eat before we go. And we had a ball. So I just have to say that event was amazing. I also have to shout out that Gig Harbor has talent show that's put out by the Kiwanis. That is a free event. So if you're not doing anything this Saturday, come here from 2 to 5. All these students have auditioned, and I think they're under 8th grade, right? Is that right? I don't think they're over 8th grade. I thought it was K through 8. And it's like a 3-hour event, and it's free. And so I'm going to be picking those kids for our welcome back. They don't know that yet. But what a great opportunity. So I'm so grateful for the Kiwanis, and I'm going to join the Kiwanis. So I love them so much. I will be speaking at the Key Pen Lions Club on Saturday evening and sharing the good work and all of the wonderful things that are happening out on the KP. On 3/28, we have the Educator Career Fair. So if there's anyone listening or anyone in the audience that wants to be hired, come on out, right? I'm looking, is Dan back there? Dan DeZone, what's the time? Is it 9 to 2:30? 9 to 3 on 3/28 at the Tacoma Dome, correct? Convention Center. At the Convention Center. All right, so I always look forward to that. And I have to say, I did see Dan DeZone about a year ago at the career fair. So it worked. What? And then he's here. So that's how it works. Yep, that's how it works. And I just want to say, we have so many arts and music events that are coming up. I just really encourage that the adults in any of our Peninsula area schools just pick one and come on out. Whether it's sports, clubs, or activities, whether it's arts or music, you want to go to Mamma Mia, you can go and sing, like any of those events. Please look on our website. And lastly, I just want to say that I had an opportunity to interview Ashley Stolhand last week. And she is going to be phenomenal. And she's so excited about being at Gig Harbor. So I was glad that she was able to be here today. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's move into board discussion and comments. I feel like I always look down at this end first, so I'm gonna go to you first, Lori.
All right, just wanted to say that I also had the chance to go with my son to the pancake breakfast at Henderson Bay High School for the Interact Club fundraiser, and Katie and all the other students that were in charge did a fantastic job, and it was just a really well-run fundraiser, and we had a great time. So it was actually pretty funny. My son is 21. He was home from college. I told him I was taking him out to breakfast. And so I told him to go up the hill. And he's like, where is there a place? And he goes, I said, I'm not going to tell you. And he goes, well, have I been there before? And I said, well, probably, but you've never had breakfast there. So we pull in the parking lot, and then he was just thoroughly confused. He's like, I don't understand what is happening. So we had a great time. And then the only other thing is just a comment, really. Someone asked the question way back when Ashley was giving the presentation about enrollment, and I have really just been contemplating this lately because I grew up in Bellevue, and if you've been following the news there and other districts too, it's just a fascinating thing to contemplate. And 2 of the schools that I attended as a kid that were packed have closed recently, and it's just, it just is what it is. It's not a commentary on decisions that are made or any of that. Just the fact that sometimes things can be foreseen, sometimes they certainly can't, like a pandemic. But it just so grateful to work with professionals that have foreseen what they could and dealt with what couldn't have been foreseen. But, as soon as there was an inkling of the direction things were going, just really spending just countless hours working on things to keep us in the best and most responsible place possible. So it's just a pleasure, and I know it's just been a ton of work, and the work isn't over. And to all of the individuals that many of you are in this room that have represented every work group and whatnot, just really appreciate everyone putting their heads together to figure out how to solve a difficult situation with the least impact to students possible, so that we can continue to put kids first in everything that we do.
Part of that?
What?
Can you mention the ironic part of that?
Well, yeah, I was just is ironic that I yeah, well, I did have a chance to speak to Dr. Jarvis, who was here and is now in Bellevue, and he did say that because he knows that I'm from there, and he was saying that he has contemplated the irony that he built schools in Peninsula and is closing schools in Bellevue. So it's just, who would have guessed? But anyway, so thanks for all the work that you've all done.
Tonight's was the Region 3 meeting, and so I told them that we wouldn't be able to make that, but they had some really good things on the agenda, and so I talked to Marissa Poliquin and let her know I'll be reaching out to her tomorrow to get a brief back, and then once I find out what was discussed and the outcomes of the Region 3 meeting tonight, I'll send an email to the board and the superintendent, let y'all know how that went. And then just very high level, we had a school board retreat last week to discuss our facilities and our visioning for the future of the school district. And so that was a really nice couple-hour event that we had with Patrick. So that's it. Thanks.
Go down the line. Just wanted to touch on no committee meetings, but I did attend a site visit as part of the literacy task force with Lisa Ray and another parent. And we went and we visited Olalla Elementary School, and it was interesting. I mean, it was a really eye-opening and fascinating visit for many reasons. The school was chosen because they are outperforming their schools in their growth in literacy. And so we were going to visit their K1 and 2. And they have, within the past, 2 or 3 years, I think, adopted some structured literacy curriculum, and they applied for and were awarded grants for really robust professional development around this. So we're going to see what they're doing. And it was really, really amazing to watch. And there was the component of watching what the teachers were doing in the classroom and the passion and enthusiasm that they all had for this program was really what struck me the most. I mean, there wasn't any, because of the quality of the resources and the training that they were receiving, they were like, they loved it. And so and that came through in their teaching. And it was really, really cool to watch, like 2 different classrooms, different personalities, different cultures within these classrooms, but very, very, very similar in the way that they were dynamic. Their lessons were short, dynamic, multisensory, really engaging. And they were using common language. And so this idea of, fidelity across different classrooms and across different schools, like it was right there on display. And probably the thing I will never forget was they were talking about why are they doing things using their whole body, right? Like they're writing things and they're saying things out loud and they're clapping and they're using sounding out sticks and all sorts of this stuff, right? In very quick succession, moving around. And one child, second grader, raises their hand and says, oh, it's because it's sticky learning. Oh, well, what's sticky learning? And then this other kid shoots his hand up in the back and he goes, well, actually, it's called orthographic mapping. And it's how all of these different ways in which we can our body, like these are all different channels to help us learn, and we learn in different ways, and so it helps us really cement that this orthographic mapping. And all of us were just like, are you kidding me? I think we all teared up a little bit because it was just incredible, and that kind of metacognition, right, understanding the why behind why you're doing certain things was so powerful to see. And so I found it really exciting, and if the opportunity to bring some of these stuff, and I have no doubt that this is we do have these things going on in our district, but that kind of fidelity and having the confidence to knowing that our teachers can have access to things like this is really inspiring. And I think too, in light of the heavy conversations we've been having around budget and all of these other things, to be able to see the work that our teachers do every single day, right, showing up. This was just a Tuesday in a second grade classroom, and to see how incredible what they were doing was what they do every single day. And those kind of moments, not the big flashy moments and presentations, but what they do every day and what our students are capable of was just fantastic. So that was really a highlight. So yeah, that's all I have to share.
There we go. A partial eclipse of the moon could have been what happened when you're book reading. Right?
Could have.
Right. Okay. So just a thought.
I don't know. I'm going to have to bring you to Pioneer, and you need to be cross-examined by the
Okay.
kindergartners.
Yeah. So I read Fuzzy McWhiskers. Sounds like several other people might have too.
I think
So-
we're all
So all I have to say is, kaboom!
Kaboom! You're too cute.
Yeah. That was great. That was fun. It's always so enthusiastic going into the classrooms of the little ones in the elementary level. Just so I got to do reading at Vaughan Elementary School, and that was the highlight of my week. I also got to participate in breaking down the walls. I saw Alex down at the other end, down there. We did the same day, and yeah. So that was a lot of fun. It was eye-opening. There was a lot of emotions in there, and yeah, I think everybody needs to experience that. That was good. Yeah.
Can I ask a quick question about breaking down the walls?
Uh-huh.
Do you guys find that it's like a one-day thing, or has that like extended? I mean, beyond the initial day, because I hear many people rave about that experience, but.
I would think the relationships that are built in there are probably lifelong, some of them.
Yeah, I would say for most kids, it's not just a one-day thing. Like it lasts at least the rest of the school year because it makes a big impact on them. Some kids it's more impactful than others because of how seriously you take the program. But I think it extends throughout the school year.
Yeah, and for those of you who don't know what it is, it's about recognizing that we all have issues and we all have emotions and concerns that are so much alike. Yeah.
I just want to say something real quick because Avery took my spot. I was going to say something, but no, I did not.
Yes, you did.
Okay, well, I think like the relationships that are built there, you really get to know everyone there. It's such like invulnerable, but also you get to know everybody there. Like after that experience, everyone there, kind of what not everything they're going through, but a short amount of what they're going through, and a little bit of their story. And that really just helps you get to know everybody in your school, and it's really special.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Helps so many people to realize they're not alone, too, in some of those things that they're going through. I wanted to say the crab feed was great. That's on my notes here.
But nobody had crab.
Oh, I did.
Mr. Barr was the crab guy.
Yeah.
He loved it.
Yeah. So the capital projects, it's so good to sit in there, even though everything else is going on right now. We looked at the future, beyond where we're currently at, to see where we're going. And so we have to do that in everything we do. But that was real insightful to do that. I also want to just, and I'll finish right here, just saying that there were a lot of comments tonight and a lot of discussions about resolutions at the state level. This board, I'm very proud to say, we welcome comments from the parents, from the teachers, from the students. We are a board that listens. We can't always do everything that everybody wants us to do, but we take it into consideration, and I'm proud to be part of this board.
I was also at Vaughan this week, and I think there's still some more time to go in and read. If anyone has a chance to do so, we read Fuzzy Whiskerson. So I saw there was kindergarten available or fifth grade, and I decided I am not afraid of fifth graders, so I'm going to take them. And I'm so glad I did, because they ask the funniest questions. And I have to call out one that when I was explaining what a school board director does, there was a wise guy in the back who said, "So you're the puppet master." And I said, okay, I think we need to have a school director for a day experience so you can see how very much not puppet masters we actually are. So hopefully we'll have some kids who can come sit up here with us and maybe do some of the business with us. And thank you to Peninsula students for going to read with them too. I know a couple months ago you said you were going to do that, and you followed through, and that is fantastic. So thank you for doing that. Also, love your leadership recruiting videos. So fun. Yeah, I want to be in leadership. So thank you, Superintendent Barr, for inviting me to participate in the Student Voice Symposium. It was really fantastic. So I think the gist of everything I want to say is every time I'm around kids, it just really reinforces why we all do what we do. My own kids know. I've got 3 kids at home, but they know there are 9,000 other kids, almost 8,500 or so. Ashley, how many? I would say about 8,700 other kids. Okay, I'm going to take every single one of them, because I just feel such an affection for every student in this district. Because when I look at these kids, I just see so much individuality and potential, and really, I mean, I feel so honored to be up here and be doing this work with all of you for these wonderful, wonderful people. I will give a quick update because Charlie Brown wasn't here tonight. It looks like Purple Star is moving through. Tomorrow it will be heard in the Senate Rules Committee for the second hearing. I'm really hoping it makes it to the floor. I think if it makes it to the floor, it will be a pass. And in next month, which is Month of the Military Child, I'm really hoping that we can come and celebrate that big win for the state of Washington and for our military-connected students. And I will end on sharing with you an email that we all received today from Deb Krishnadasan, a former board member. She shared with us a photo that Hugh McMillan's family took. It was a photo of him voting yes for our school levies, and it was the last vote that he cast from this life. And I just think it's incredibly, I don't know, it's just such a huge moment to see that and to know that in his final moments, he was still thinking about you guys and supporting these schools and supporting us. And I mean, literally to his last day, he was for kids, every child, every day. So I'm so grateful that we have that photo because it's something really special. Mm-hmm. So with that, I think we are done. We will adjourn. Our next meeting is April 6th right here at 6 o'clock, Swiftwater Elementary, and we are adjourned at 7:47. Yeah, I thought that was such a